What's up, everyone? My name is Sam. Thanks so much for joining me for today's practice, which is focused on closing out 2024, taking the rest that this winter solstice invites, and recognizing what your body needs in terms of Rajas and Tamas energy in pursuit of a sattvic state. So it'll be a nice slow flow, beginner's level. Feel free to bring any blocks or props that you might need. There will be some poses that might require blocks for accessibility. Please feel free to bring a pillow for under your hips, and we'll get started in a comfortable cross-legged seat or any variation that suits you when you're ready. Coming to the mat, bring your pillow if you need it, or bolster or block, anything that you want to put under your hips. This will be our last flow of the year together, so we'll focus a little bit on kind of like the natural cycles of the earth and where your mind and body fit into that. So first, as you come to the mat, just find your comfortable seat and start to settle in. So we're wrapping up another year, another rotation around the sun. So this could be a good time just to take inventory of how you're feeling in the physical body, the intellectual body, the emotional body, and the spiritual bodies. I want you to try to pay special attention to your energy, whether you feel calm, settled, maybe lethargic, unmotivated, maybe hyperactive, anxious. Just kind of taking note of what you've been feeling recently and how you feel now. Remember, we're taking that inventory without judgment. Just here to check in and see what our minds and bodies need. And when you're checking in with that energy, we're checking in to see whether your body is prone to Rajas energy, which is kind of that fiery, active, maybe hyperactive energy, or the Tamas energy, which is more lethargic and unmotivated. So just checking in to kind of see where you are on that spectrum. And we're seeking balance and enlightenment. So we are seeking sattvic energy, which is present, calm, at peace, in control of the mind. So you might check in with the Rajas and the Tamas energies anytime you're meditating or anytime you're dropping in. Maybe you don't have the language for it, but just checking to see where you're at. And our goal should always be to find that sattvic energy as opposed to one extreme or the other. So whatever you notice here while you drop in, we're going to apply that to your movement in today's practice. As always, I would encourage you to make this practice your own. So if your body is asking for more movement, more heat, then bring that to your flow. And if your body is asking to slow down, to rein in your thoughts, to quiet the mind, then make sure you apply that to your movement. We're now in the winter solstice, which are some of the darkest days of the year, some of the least amount of sunlight. So if you want a mantra for today's practice, it might be something like, I find rest and comfort in the darkness, or I invite the energy that my body needs. As you're settling in, maybe notice the natural cycles of the breath. We might think about how we fit into the Earth's natural cycles and the natural cycles of nature. Including the changing of the seasons. More generally, I would just invite you to let your body know it's okay to relax and to slow down during this time of year. Make space for rest. You might invite that into the body now while you listen to your natural breathing rhythm. I'm just taking a mudra with my hands, but you can always also place the palms on the chest or the abdomen or whatever feels right. Finding stillness in the mind and the body. Framing today's practice for whatever you need. And just being intentionally present. So be here now. Making space for your mind and body on the mat. Not remembering the past or reliving dreams, and not planning for the future, but just being present right now. Stay connected to the breath, and we'll start to incorporate some easy movement through the head and neck. So maybe you have an idea already where you want to begin with that. If you want to follow my cues, you might start just by drawing small circles with the nose in a clockwise direction. Checking in through the neck and noticing what you feel and where, without judgment. Maybe widening those circles as you go, slowing down as much as you can to be present in every sensation. And then feel free to continue that movement in any way that your body needs. So I'm just going to reverse the circles that I'm making. And as always, I like to spend more time at the bottom, tucking my chin toward my chest, just to stretch deeply through the neck and upper back. Which is where I personally store a lot of my stress, but feel free to move in any easy, organic way that helps you connect with those muscles, with those sensations in the neck and elsewhere. And just try to notice what you feel and where, what's different on one side to the other. Notice if you're holding your breath or tensing any muscles in the face or the feet or the hands. Try to remind your body it's okay to relax. Take your time here with those big circles. If you feel totally satisfied, you can find stillness in your seat. And when you're ready, we'll meet back in the center. That nice long spine, comfortable cross-legged seat or modified seat. Check in with your posture, pull the shoulders back, tuck the chin a little bit, really long from the crown of your head to the tip of your tail. We're going to continue stretching through the upper back with a couple of options for variations for a self-embrace, essentially. So we'll bring the palms together in front of us, arms fully extended, fingertips pointed toward me. And then let's open the palms away from each other and bring the backs of the palms toward one another behind your back. We're just checking in with your range of motion there. There's two options here. As we bring the palms toward one another, we are going to either bring the palms to the upper back or come into the eagle arms variation here. So for eagle arms, we'll cross at the elbows, flex at the elbows, and then find a bind with the hands. So I'm just bringing my right fingertips into my left palm, creating some friction there to hold this bind. If that's way too much for you, you can also just continue bringing the palms to the upper back, walk the fingertips toward one another, feel that self-embrace. Whatever variation you're in, take a moment there, check in with the posture once again. On your inhale, we'll lift the elbows, get really long through the spine. And on your exhale, we'll curl inward, bringing the elbows toward the navel or the solar plexus chakra. Stretching through the upper back, we're also just feeling your own embrace, connecting with the breath. Notice what you feel on some nice big inhales. Remind your body it's okay to relax, it's okay to rest here. And just checking in with what you feel. Take a couple more cycles of breath. Just to turn inward and notice. And on your next inhale, we'll root down through the sits bones and the tailbone. Slowly articulate up through the spine, raising the elbows. Coming up to that nice long posture, and then releasing the bind, opening up the palms away from each other again, bringing them behind the back. Checking in with that range of motion again, stretching through the chest here. We're going to do the same thing, alternating arms. So when you bring the palms back toward one another, we'll put the opposite arm underneath this time. Bending at the elbows, finding your bind, or bringing your fingertips to the upper back. Checking in with that posture, following your inhale, lifting the elbows, and exhaling, bringing those elbows inward toward the solar plexus chakra. Maybe letting something go on your exhale. Maybe allowing yourself some closure for the year. Allowing yourself to leave something here on the mat that you don't need in 2025. Check in with those inhales. Notice the fullness of the breath and how it affects the sensations of the body. time here. Turn inward, quiet the mind. Bring your awareness back to the breath. And on your next inhale, we'll root down once again through the sits bones, through the tailbone, curling up through the lumbar spine, then the thoracic, releasing that bind, moving slowly and with intention, opening up the arms, checking in with that range of motion one more time, noticing what you see, hear, feel. And then bringing it all back to center. Take your time getting there. We're going to come forward onto all fours next. So move according to your ability and pace. I'm going to center myself on the mat. All right, checking in with your neutral tabletop spine. Noticing what you feel, knees under the hips, palms under the shoulders. You know what to do here. Inhale, drop the belly, tilt the pelvis, lift the gaze, pull the shoulders back. Connect with the breath. Exhale, press into the palms, low ribs come inward to meet the back body. Follow the breath and the sensations of the body. Checking in with that Rajas and Tamas energy. Try to be aware of what your body needs and is asking for and move accordingly. So if you need to slow down, do it. If you need to be more connected, pressing a little more deeply, do that. And then maybe incorporate other variations to this movement. So feel free to draw circles with the ribs, bending through the elbows here, checking in with the spine. Burning through some myofascia, releasing some potential energy. Just being present in the sensations of the body. Stay connected with the breath wherever possible. And when you feel good about it, we're going to stretch again through the upper back by threading the needle here. So from your neutral spine tabletop position, let's bring the right hand more toward the center of the mat. I'm going to press into my right palm, drag my left fingertips across that right arm, across the chest and up toward the ceiling. Checking in with my range of motion there. Twisting through the spine. And then we'll use those left fingertips to guide the left hand under the right arm, under the armpit. We're going to come down to the mat on our left shoulder, left ear. And then send that right hand up toward the top right corner of your mat. So you're just extending through that right elbow. Once again, settling in here. You can make it nice and passive if you need a little calming energy, if you need to slow down at the end of the year. Or you can kind of pull that left shoulder into its socket and reach those right fingertips a little bit further if you want a little more active stretch. Wherever you are, make sure you're connected with the breath. Remember your mantra if you had one. When you're ready, we'll bring our awareness back to that right hand. Maybe moving just just the fingertips to begin with. We'll bend into that right elbow to bring the right palm under the right shoulder. Press into that palm to unravel. And let's drag that left hand back across the mat and up toward the ceiling again. Checking in with that range of motion for a second time. Noticing what you see, what you hear, what you feel. And then bringing that left hand back down to the mat. We'll place it somewhere near the center, under the center of our chest. Sink your weight into that left palm this time, and we'll drag the right fingertips across that left arm, across the chest and toward the ceiling. Just noticing, checking in. Let those right fingertips guide the right hand under the left armpit, coming down onto that right shoulder, right ear, right side of the face. And then we'll send that left hand up toward the top left corner of the mat, making it as active or as passive as you need. Remind your body it's okay to relax. Notice if you're tensing or holding anywhere that you shouldn't be. Notice if you're having difficulty finding stillness in the body or the mind. And if so, what's distracting you? When you feel great on this side, we'll bring our awareness to those left fingertips, left palm. Let's bend into the left elbow to bring the left palm under the left shoulder. And then pressing into that palm, extending through that left elbow. We'll bring that right hand back up toward the ceiling. Checking in again with that range, just noticing what you feel and where. And then we'll bring that right palm back down to the mat. Coming back into our tabletop all fours position. We're going to curl the toes under from here and move into a downward dog. So full extension through the knees, sending the hips up toward the ceiling or the sky. Heels do not need to touch the floor. The flat back is more important. Take your time here, checking in. If this is your first downward dog of the day, just notice how you feel. Feel free to bend through the knees generously if you need to. Or maybe alternate pressing through the feet, checking in with the hamstrings. Just kind of hanging out here and being curious for a second. Good. When you feel good about it, we'll slide that left foot more toward the center of the mat. We're going to come into a three-legged dog by raising the right toes up toward the ceiling, really reaching, taking up space, getting long. We'll bend into that right knee, bring that right foot all the way up and through, frame it between both hands. We're going to drop that back knee down to the mat, just for a low lunge. Extend through that left foot, make sure you're grounded. We'll hinge at the hips, bring the hands up and overhead, fingertips facing the ceiling. And if you feel really stable here, you can interlace your fingers, bend into the elbows, and kind of come into this like supportive neck holding position. And then you can just further that back bend. So just bend a little bit deeper here, or raise the gaze toward the ceiling, elevate the chest toward the ceiling. Try to find your balance. Don't go too deep. Be mindful of the pressure on the low back. And then from here, we'll send the hands back up and overhead and come into a little side body stretch. So if your right knee is forward, we'll grab that left wrist with the right hand. Pull that wrist up toward the ceiling, getting longer. And then lean over to the right side of the mat, maybe sinking down into that right hip. Noticing what you feel and where. There's a lot happening here, so try to be present. And when you're ready, we'll press back into that right foot, release the hands. We can bring both of the hands down to frame that right foot. And we're gonna roll onto your right heel, extending through that right knee. So if you're not set up exactly right, you can move that left knee back first before extending through the right knee. Right toes come up toward the ceiling. Feel free to use blocks or props here. You can also bring the fingertips, the hands closer to the body if you need to. Remember, make this as active or as passive as you want. So you can let gravity do the work here. You can also engage that right hip and just kind of pull, or imagine pulling the right heel in toward the right hip. And just notice how that changes the sensation of this pose. Nice and long through the spine, but you can relax through the head and neck. Just be mindful that you're not slumped over. Take your time in this pose. If it feels great, stay there a little longer. If you're ready to come out, we'll start by bending into that right knee, coming back onto the sole of that right foot. And then we'll just send that right foot back for your tabletop position. What we do to one side, we'll do to the other. So let's start by curling the toes under and meeting back in downward dog. Remember, your heels don't have to touch, but maybe your downward dog is a little bit different now than the first one today. If not, that's okay too. Let's recenter that right foot, bringing it somewhere toward the midline of the mat. And we'll come into three-legged dog on the second side. So just bringing that left foot up toward the ceiling, really reaching, taking up space, making this cool shape. Lift the gaze to between the palms, bend into that left knee. We're going to bring that left foot all the way up and through to be framed by both hands. We'll lower that right knee to the mat to come into your low lunge. So finding your balance, hinging at the hips, bringing both palms up for starters, fingertips toward the ceiling, maybe sinking down into that. Maybe keeping some integrity here, engaging the legs, the quads. It's your choice. Remember, you can interlace your fingers, bend into the elbows and support the neck, extending the thumbs down the neck, maybe giving yourself a little massage, opening up through the chest, deepening that back bend just a bit, noticing what you feel and where. When you're ready, we'll send the fingertips back up toward the ceiling. This time we're going to grab the right wrist with the left hand, pull it up toward the ceiling, and then pull that right wrist over to the left side of the mat. Notice what you feel and where. What's different on this side, if anything? Take your time here, and when you're ready, we'll cycle the hands back down to frame that left foot. Remember, if you need to walk the right knee back here before we extend through the left, take this time to do that. So go ahead and get set up. And we'll extend through that left knee, rolling onto the left heel, left toes come up toward the ceiling, and you make this stretch as passive or as active as you'd like. Reconnect with the breath if you've lost that. Come back to the present moment if you've been distracted. Just noticing what you feel and where without being overwhelmed. Listening to the messages from the body without judgment and without attachment. Stay here as long as you'd like. Remember, you can move the hands closer to the body if you need to. When you're ready to transition, we'll bend into that left knee, bring the sole of the left foot back to the mat. Once again, sending that left knee back into your tabletop position. Okay, we're gonna invite a little Rajas energy here. We're gonna continue the movement. We'll curl the toes under, come back into a downward dog, heels toward the floor. They don't need to touch. We're gonna come into a lizard variation. We're not gonna stay here long though. So once again, we'll start by planting that left foot somewhere near the middle of the mat, sliding the right toes up toward the ceiling for a three-legged dog. Take your time. Enjoy the perspective. We'll bend into that right knee, and we'll bring that right foot all the way up to the outside edge of the right hand, and then we're actually gonna heel toe that foot a little off the mat. Go ahead and drop that left knee down to the mat, maybe walking it backwards a little bit, getting yourself set up here. And we're just gonna stay in this full extension at the elbows, or maybe you're on a couple blocks here. We're not gonna get too deep into this lizard pose today. I'm going to sink my weight into my left palm here and get balanced. And then I'm gonna just press my right palm on the inside edge of my right thigh, kind of opening up that right hip a little more deeply. Take whatever variation is calling to you today. Incorporate your props as needed. We won't be here too long. Reconnect with the breath. Let's bring the right palm back down to the mat. And we're gonna move from this lizard variation into a pigeon pose. So you have to pick up your hands as you go, but I'm going to heel toe my foot across the mat toward the other side of the mat. And theoretically, we should be able to open up just like that, sinking down, bringing the hips down to the mat. But you may need to adjust that degree of flexion in the right knee. So bring your heel closer in toward the body if you need to feel stable and balanced. Coming into the seated version of this before we fold. So just checking in here, notice if you're rolling to one side or if something feels really tight. Notice what you feel and where. And just find your balance here before we hinge at the hips, walk the hands forward, bring the forehead down toward your block or prop or pillow, or you can stack your fists or stack your palms here, bring the forehead down to that. And if none of that is accessible, that's totally fine. You can just stay in the upright version of this pose, bending into the elbows, checking in with that right hip as you do. So honoring the body wherever you are, without judgment, without attachment. Once again, quieting the mind, finding stillness in the mind and body. Just noticing the way the mind reacts to what we're asking it to do right now, which is find stillness and observe without attachment. Reconnect with the breath. Reground yourself in this present moment if you've wandered to the future or to the past. Maybe remember your mantra if you had one. Stay here as long as you'd like. We'll take a few more cycles of breath just to turn inward. When you're ready to come out, let's transition slowly, gently, and mindfully. Lifting the forehead, pressing the palms into the mat. Slowly extending through the elbows, finding your center, getting balanced. Taking a minute just to reset yourself here in the upright version of this pose. We'll bend into the elbows slightly, curl the back toes under to lift that left knee. And then we'll send that right foot all the way back, coming back into our downward dog. Take a moment here, shake out the head and neck, notice what you feel. And we'll get ready for that second side, centering that right foot somewhere near the midline of the mat. Lifting the left toes up toward the ceiling, coming into that three-legged dog. Lift the gaze to between the palms. Sorry. We're going to bend into that left knee and actually bring that left foot to the outside edge of the left palm, but maybe still helpful to lift the gaze. All right, we'll lower that back knee, so right knee comes down to the mat. And we're just going to let the left toes spill off the left side of the mat. So you're outside of the left side of the palm. I'm going to sink my weight into my right palm and just press my left palm into the inside edge of my left thigh, left knee. Just noticing what you feel and where. Not coming into any deep version of lizard today, but it can be really great for hip opening if you need that. So just try to note what your body's telling you here in this pose. When you feel good about it, we'll release that left palm to the mat. We're going to heel toe that left foot all the way over to the right side of the mat. And then we'll lay that left knee down toward the left side of the mat. So you could come into somewhere near parallel shin to the top edge of the mat, but feel free to just use your hand to pull that left heel in a little closer toward the body if that's way too intense a sensation. So find the degree of flexion in that left knee that works for you. Extend it through that right foot. Find that nice balanced upright version of this pigeon pose before we walk the hands forward. And bring the forehead down to a block or a pillow or stacked fists or stacked palms or maybe all the way to the floor. Wherever you land, settle in. Make sure you're balanced. And right away, try to quiet the mind, find stillness in the mind. Connect deeply with the breath. Take this time to turn inward and just be. If your eyes are closed, you might slowly bat them open. Reorient yourself to the body, to the room. When you're ready to come out, we'll bring the fingertips or the palms to the mat. Extend through the elbows. Finding that upright version of this pose. And then from here, we're gonna bend into that right knee to just bring that right foot forward in front of us. So we're gonna come into a seated forward fold, sending both legs out long. If you know that this forward fold is inaccessible to you, if you're really tight in the hamstrings, you can go ahead and proactively bring the feet to the mat, bending into the knees, and you'll fold forward here and bring the arms behind the knees when you do. For a traditional seated forward fold, we'll start in a staff pose, basically legs at full extension, nice and long through the spine, palms on the mat on the outside of the hips, fingertips facing forward. Check in with your posture, check in with your breath. We'll send the hands up toward the ceiling, palms facing each other, really reaching, getting a little longer. And then we'll hinge at the hips, folding forward. Imagine sending your hands somewhere beyond the feet. But wherever they land, they land. If you're on the outside of the ankles, that's fine. If you want to open up the palms toward the ceiling, that's fine too. Wherever you are, go ahead and relax through the head, the neck, the shoulders. Turn inward once again, not forcing any shape. Just feeling the connection of the body to the earth. Beginning to absorb the nutrients of your practice. Bring a little self-love to this pose as we start to wrap up the flow today. Remind your body again, it's okay to relax. And it's not only okay to rest, but it's necessary. So if that's what your body and mind are asking for as we wrap up the year, I encourage you to make that offering. Make space for rest. Stay here as long as you'd like. When you're ready to come out of this pose, we'll do so slowly and mindfully, rooting down through the sits bones and the tailbone, and slowly articulating up through each and every vertebra. So moving slow, like you're moving through water or some other medium. Finding that nice long spine, rolling the shoulders back, tucking the chin a bit. And then from here, let's bend into that right knee. And tuck it into the body. So heel comes in toward the hips, pulling that right knee in toward the body, maybe wrapping your arms around it. We'll use the hands to guide your right heel, right ankle to the outside edge of the left thigh. So just cross that right ankle over the left thigh, keeping it nice and tight to the body. Let's extend that left arm and wrap it really tightly around that right knee, pulling it in toward the body, and then continue that rotation, sending the right fingertips behind you, planting them behind the tailbone, sitting up, lifting and twisting that right shoulder back toward the right. You might also try to look over your right shoulder if you want to continue that twist through the cervical spine. Listen to your body. Make sure you can breathe wherever you are. You can gently release that bind when you're ready, moving back through center slowly, maybe using the hands to unravel, sending that right leg out. We'll do the same thing on the second side. Bending into the left knee, tucking that left heel in toward the body, toward the hips. We'll use the hands to guide that left heel, left ankle to the outside edge of the right thigh. Pulling it in nice and tight, sitting up nice and tall. And then once again, we'll wrap that right arm around that left knee. Left hand comes around behind us, planting the fingertips, sitting up, lifting and twisting. Maybe looking back over that left shoulder. Stay connected with the breath and this present moment. Stay here as long as you'd like, and when you're ready to come out, move with intention. We are going to come right back into the cross-legged seat or other seat that we started in. So get there however you get there. As we wrap up this practice, we might reflect on the circular nature of time and the seasons and their cycles, routines. We might re-reflect on our mantra, remembering to give our body, to invite into our bodies the energy that we need this year, whether it's tamastic or rajas energy, seeking that sattvic balance and enlightenment. We might re-invite ourselves to rest, to embrace this season, to slow down, to let go of what we don't need in the next year, in the next season, to embrace what we learned and the ways in which we grew this year. Come back to the breath and the body in this moment. I would invite you just to leave something here on the mat, to be intentional about leaving that thing behind. I invite you to step into that energy that your body needs this year to continue to learn and grow, to give yourself grace, to prioritize your health, to be in connection with everything. As we wrap up this practice, you might take this time to turn inward. I'm going to do a quick land acknowledgement and close us out. But feel free to ignore that close out and continue meditating if that's what your body's asking for. As you're reconnecting with the breath, I want to recognize that I'm instructing from unceded Monongahela and Osage territories. We recognize and honor the past and ongoing struggles for liberation among Indigenous peoples of the world. I would encourage you to find out whose Indigenous lands you are practicing from and to figure out how you can connect with their ongoing liberation struggles. Feel free to bring your palms together at the heart space or in front of the forehead or third eye or wherever feels right. You can also just open your hands in your lap or take a mudra with the fingers, whatever's in your practice. We also want to recognize that yoga is an ancient spiritual practice stemming from the subcontinent of India and Indian culture. So we respect and honor that cultural heritage. We also recognize that yoga functions in many ways for many different peoples of the world, including as a community. I thank you so much for being part of my community today. I hope you got something that you needed here today, and I hope to see you again soon. Namaste.